Hey everybody, this is Perch. You realize how many of my videos actually start, "Hey everybody, this is Perch." It'll drive you crazy. You just start listening to this. I'm like, "Hey everybody, this is Perch." And then I start talking. I don't know why I do that, but there you go. The purpose or the topic on this video is really, what are you looking for in comics? And this sounds like a pretty innocuous, benign question, but I have a feeling like here's an area of kind of some major disconnect between people. And I have a theory that the buying audience of comics, the people who are, paying money and actually going to the store and purchasing these things, it potentially is there's some split of what people are looking for in comics between the people who are pirating it, the people who are purchasing it, kind of who the different audiences are. I have a feeling that those genres are a big deal. And I'll tell you how I got onto this topic. I got into it coming from an odd direction. I published a video, I don't know, several days, week, whenever it was, about Nazis, and that the Nazis are bad people. I tried to lead with that because people get really hung up. I often say Nazis shouldn't be villains in comics. And then people will be like, "Oh, you think Nazis are okay?" It's like, no, no, Nazis are bad. Nazis are bad. I still believe, and it's not like I'm going to die on this hill, but I feel like I'm getting close to it. There is a difference between World War II organized Nazi army and, guys who are, running around cosplaying as Nazis, or guys who are maybe super wealthy trying to instill fascism. I think those are actually three different groups. I don't think it's just two. I think there's different groups. I think everything gets kind of labeled catch-all of Nazi. And the reality is, I think the term Nazi gets basically used to mean, person I don't like, i.e. Nazi. Like, oh, you're and I think in a previous video I talked about how, once upon a time, if you go back to the 80s, Nazi was just thrown around like for like a strict teacher. Like, oh, this guy's being a Nazi. Like, stop being such a Nazi with the chips over there. Anyway, things have shifted. But my main premise for why Nazis are not good villains in comics is because it doesn't make any sense. You for a long time I would use the argument of, why doesn't Charles Xavier, if you had this like group of abhorrent, racist, terrible, awful people who are Nazis, why wouldn't Charles Xavier just go in there and be like, you know what, I'm going to do a little mind tweak and just like, "Oop, all right, Nazis are gone." And before you say, "Well, Charles would never do such a thing because he's a hero and heroes don't do," like, have you looked at how they've written Xavier for the last like 10, 20 years? No, he's totally capable of doing that. He would do that. Like, if he had the means to do it, he would do it. It doesn't. And also, like, the problem is, if you use Nazis as a villain in a comic, then at some point you're gonna be writing and drawing a scene where like Ghost Rider shows up to confront like 30 guys in with picket signs or tiki torches. And that's going to be a really boring comic because that is going to be a really quick fight. Like there's the problem is, it's a little bit, I'll use wrestling terms to try to, Cody Rhodes is the world champion. You got Roman Reigns, who had a big run as champion. If they said, okay, tonight we're getting a match between Roman Reigns and like the guy, Gilbert, I don't even know if he's still alive, but just like, or, just some jobber, some guy who's we've never seen before, who weighs less than a third of Roman Reigns' weight. And then we go ahead and we put on a highly competitive, like 20-minute match. If you did that, it would damage Roman Reigns significantly, because he should just destroy somebody like that. Like, there is no match. It'll be over in like two seconds. It should be a complete and absolute squash. If you let some unknown doofus, out wrestle or basically hang with Roman Reigns for 20 minutes, then, it doesn't help the doofus. It hurts Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns looks like a fool. That's kind of the problem with Nazis in comics. The majority of people they would go up against can toast them immediately. And if there's like, you have Captain America running around like, it's always a good day to kill Nazis. And it's like, okay, well, one, that doesn't sound like Captain America. And two, Like, Captain America's running around with Iron Man and Thor. Like, what do you even what are we doing here? Thor, it wouldn't be a competitive fight. And I've made this example before, and yes, I've heard well, yeah, but the comic editors are obsessed with Nazis. So that's why we're getting Nazis in comics. I'm like, okay, well, I understand all those reasons, but as a customer and as a fan, it still doesn't make any goddamn sense to have Nazis as your main villain. And to be fair, the Red Skull, when he would show up in Captain America back in like the 80s, I never really liked his appearances. I think Mark Grinwald would do things where he made he'd either make him a shadowy figure in the background, manipulating things because he knew that if it was ever the Red Skull versus Captain America's kicking his ass everywhere. Or they would have the Red Skull like, I've come up with a cosmic cube or this power armor or something that's got to kind of balance the scales a little bit because otherwise it's a boring ass fight. That's the problem. The idea of like punching Nazis works back in World War II, where you've got thousands of Nazis. You got an army and you didn't have everybody running around, with like full blown overpowered superpowers. But if you took the Avengers of today, the current Avengers team, Vision, Scarlet Witch, and Scarlet Witch, like, no more Nazis. All right, World War II over. That's the problem. You can't just have them fight jobbers. It blows. But I think it raises the question I mentioned earlier. What are you trying to get out of your comic? And for me, superhero comics are meant to be bigger than life, fantastical, huge stakes, big villains, all that kind of stuff. It's superhero comic for a reason. So therefore, we're here to see chaos. It's why I liked Mark Millar's Authority, his run on it, because the villains he introduced, like the Doctor villain he introduced, was truly horrifying, scary, devastating, massive powers, was going to really screw up all the heroes. Like, it was threatening. When you would see Stanley and Jack Kirby be like, and here's Galactus, and he's going to eat the whole goddamn planet. How about that one? That's what superhero comics are to me, and that's what I look for in superhero comics. I also like indie comics where it's a more grounded story of, people without powers who are kind of doing stuff. Maybe it's a horror comic like Walking Dead. Imagine The Walking Dead for a moment. If you had, the Justice League in there with The Walking Dead, it would ruin the comic because Superman just mows through all of them. Like, Superman kind of fixes that problem potentially in in a very quick amount of time, unless somehow they're magical and they can bite him, and then now you've got the Deceased series. But generally, comic books, the genre that they're in needs to play to that genre. And so if it's superhero books and you've got like, you know, overpowered Ultron or Thanos or Darkseid or the Joker or any of these kinds of characters, it's hard to have Nazis as your villain because, again, the heroes are overpowered. And frankly, and this is the thing that's going to get me into trouble, but I'm going to do it anyway. Nazis are bad in real life, but Nazis compared to Darkseid, who wants to eliminate all life in the universe, Darkseid's worse. Turns out there is something worse than Nazis. Darkseid. It's why I've gotten hung up on that panel of the Joker being like, at least I'm not a Nazi. Yeah, but you just randomly kill thousands of people. Like, I don't, I mean, yeah, I guess at least you're not racist, but lots of people are dying. I think to the people dying, it doesn't really matter if you're a Nazi or not. They're dead. Like that. So that's to me is the fundamental problem. But I think it goes back to, what do you want out of comics? What do you want out of a superhero story? And my hunch is this, by the way. I think the people who are more interested in seeing kind of modern day villains, meaning Nazis or, people on the Epstein Island or whatever. I mean, because the challenge of this topic is it cuts right wing or left wing a lot. But it's just as stupid. In fact, it's I mean, in some cases, stupider. If it goes the other direction politically. I don't want to see the Avengers versus the Epstein client list. I don't want to see it. That is a boring list. Again, Charles Xavier, it's like, oh my God, are we ever going to get this Epstein client list out? Xavier's like, no, here it is. And by the way, he didn't kill himself. And here's who did. It was Hillary. No, I'm kidding. Or who knows, right? Uh, my point is, I don't want to see the other quote unquote the other side get characters. I don't want to see, the Teen Titans against liberals. I don't want to see, I don't want to see the Justice League versus Antifa. Like I nobody wants to see that. Like the Justice League is called into Portland to help deal with looting. I mean, like I mean, Christ, what a boring issue that would be. Seriously, like who? Nobody wants to see that. I mean, I'm sure some of you right now are saying I want to see it, but nobody wants to see this. It would be a terrible comic. The Justice League versus Antifa? No, I mean, other than the spectacle of something that's really stupid, it wouldn't be a good comic. But I have a feeling like the people who are not paying for comics, the people who are pirating and, they're here for, social clout, bucks. I don't know what that even means. The people who are interested in that shit, those are the people who are going to be interested in Nazis as the main villain. The people who are not actually paying for anything. The people who are paying for things have chosen to take dollars out of their pocket and invest in superhero comics. And damn it, they want to see superheroes fight supervillains. And Nazis are not supervillains. Nazis are just villains. Supervillains mean they actually, are threatening beyond tiki torches to Superman. That comic, Superman Spashes a Klan, was a clever story. It works as a one-off. It would not work as an ongoing series. Like, you can't have the Klan show up every week. Eventually, Superman's just going to blow them off the planet. Oh, well. So my question is, what are you looking for? I know this is kind of a controversial take because we've had things like Watchmen and we've had things like, Born Again and all these other kind of series go on. But I don't want a hyper-realistic take in superhero comics because I think it is impossible. It's impossible to do in a way that doesn't make you feel dumb later. Like, I don't want to see, Superman fighting climate change or worse, like Reed Richards and Tony Stark fighting climate change. I think they figured it out. They figured it out really quickly. It's in a recent issue of Fantastic Four, Reed Richards figures out food for vampires. Okay, the problem with that is, okay, now there can't really be vampires now. I mean, there's no longer can you do the threatening like, oh, they're going to get us all. Like we've developed snacks for vampires, so we kind of that's a damaging issue for that reason. But anyway, all right, that's my take. Shit on it if you will. Thanks for listening.